guys, welcome to the Every Plant Story podcast. My name is Shane, and we have in studio today with us Sam back.
Hello.
On episode 2.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Yes, I'm glad to be back. I was here at orientation, and then we had the break in December, and now I'm back, and it's like everything's so different, especially at Aloma. Like Robert gave me a walkthrough, and it's just from 2 weeks ago to today.
Yeah, I mean, even this room is changing on the weekly. So it's been a lot of growth, and we're happy to. Obviously, a lot of listeners sent their best wishes.
Yes, thank you
for what you had going on in your life, and we're happy to have you back.
Yes,
hasn't been the same without you.
Oh, you're so sweet.
And that other voice on the microphone there is Zach.
Hello.
Good to have you with us today, Zach. He is our media director here at Gabriella Plants, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But thank you for listening to the Every Plant Story podcast. This is the place where we share the stories involving the plants that we grow and the stories of other people who grow plants, whether professionally or as a hobby, and all with the mission of being able to deepen each other's love and understanding of plants as much as possible. So we're glad you guys are able to join us on this episode, and we thank you for listening. I just want to go over some housekeeping stuff before we get into our special guest a little bit later in the mid segment today. But to start with, obviously Sam's back. Zach, you've been working on all kinds of new projects. We also, like Sam mentioned, I mean, every team here is doing better than I could have even imagined. Especially now that we operate in 2 locations. We're recording this podcast actually out of my office at Aloma, our second location, which is now our offices for anything that has to do with the customer experience, from developers to media people to customer care, as well as our shipping team works out of this location. Then we have our original growing location as well. And Brett is doing a great job leading that location. And Sam, being back, is now over at the greenhouse location. Because, I mean, Sam, just a little bit of backstory. You were, I mean, technically the first Gabriella employee out of all the team members.
December 2016-ish?
Yes.
Around then?
Yeah, because for those of you who don't know, I took over my dad's wholesale greenhouse operation in January of 2017.
Right.
And I remember talking to you at one point, like on my back porch or something, like, hey, I mean, I don't know what you're doing or how much time you got, but like, I agreed to help my dad out this way. And I mean, that was before we even met online customers.
Right. It was just, it wasn't even necessarily like, I started working at Gabriel as much as it was like, hey man, like I'm taking over this thing, and it was,
help.
Yeah, exactly. You're one guy
with a desperate cry for help.
Exactly. Acres of greenhouse by yourself. And for a while it was just like we were just kind of in there, just floating from thing to thing, just trying to keep our heads on straight.
Doing everything that like I remember growing up and seeing my dad do, but yet also not understanding half of it. Like a fax machine, I still don't understand the fundamental technology of fax.
Trying to figure out where you are in a Popka when it's a complete dead zone. You're on a dirt road somewhere.
And the only like reference that Dad left behind are like these hand sketched maps. Zach, have you ever seen those hand sketched maps? Yeah, they're like legit from the 90s.
Like, are they on napkins or something?
No, they're on like a card stock, but it's also from probably like 1998. So the paper has
it's like done that yellow thing. Like you can tell it's been sitting there. And the other crazy thing is it's like 1-to-1 accurate. Like
really?
Yeah.
Like
all hand sketched.
Yeah, if you're there and it's like it's right here.
It's probably more accurate than like Google Maps.
Exactly. Like you're going to be closer. If you know the surrounding, it's dead accurate.
Wow. I mean, obviously we're just tangenting, but obviously that map though, if you want to put into perspective of like, that's one of the coolest things about like my story personally is like being third generation. Like, first of all, you didn't have Google Maps back then. You know what I mean? You set when that map was created, not when we took over the business, but that was the only thing you had. So the best thing you could have was the napkin of like, so if you go past the third stop sign and you make a right and you look for the second orange tree and then you make it, you know what I mean? Like that was the only thing you had. So yeah, definitely a completely different thing. And then
totally different world.
We, as most know, we, eventually found, what was happening with Plants Online and decided to venture into that. But Sam's been with me since the beginning. It's good to have you on the podcast.
Great to be here.
I feel like you bring such a unique perspective because in some senses, even though you didn't grow up with it, it wasn't
Right.
in your family. You remember seeing both sides, both in how we
Definitely.
serve our customers online now, but also the fundamentals of growing since you were
where
around.
it came from.
Yeah.
And I think that's been the cool thing is kind of like you said, I didn't grow up with it. I wouldn't consider myself a quote plant person, but then growing up or not growing along the business alongside of it. And then kind of the mission in the last, year with Every Plant Has a Story, seeing those passions, not only yours and your families, but these other people in the business and industry has lit that passion more for me. And seeing somebody like Brett talk is
It's
like
contagious.
It is. It really is. And that's been one of the coolest parts about being, from then to now, even how much Apopka's changed and our relationships with those growers that I remember, making wholesale calls to, going, where does this box go? Or,
Yeah, exactly.
Or wait, we left those ferns on the wrong dock?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and there's so many stories. Well, we'll have to just have like a whole, like, we're too young age-wise to have a podcast with the title of like back in the old days.
I was just going to say that.
But like, maybe we do. Maybe
we should though.
Whenever we have a guest cancel, maybe that's like the backup plan.
We'll have some OGs in here.
Too bad we're going to leave that in here so people know
Exactly.
if they're hearing that, it's only because it's a plan B. Probably shouldn't play our cards like that. But you know what? When have I not been like
Let them in.
overly transparent
Exactly.
to a fault almost? But yeah, it's good to have you back.
Absolutely.
Some other housekeeping stuff. Obviously, the team's rolling great. Our order turnaround time, we had a little bit of a backlog there from the winter break that we took. Just, with the ways that the days fell, being on weekdays and stuff, it didn't make sense to ship plants.
Right, it's going to make it really difficult to get them out there.
It was going to be really difficult for the month of December, but we've caught up on that. So if you do want to order any plants online, you can always order online at GabrielaPlants.com, and we would sure appreciate that. A couple other housekeeping things on the podcast. Obviously, this is episode 2. We do have quite a number of guests lined up for the rest of this month. I'm really excited about some of the other ones that I was able to share with you guys, and I think there's a lot of good ahead.
Oh yeah,
for the podcast, and I'm really excited to get to tell those stories as much of a pun as it is.
Pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the point of this. Is I think that those growers, even some of the ones that are fairly disconnected offline, those types of people have a lot of useful things to share, and it's a good thing. So last note, other than the shipping thing for Gabriela, is just that we do live in Florida. Central Florida is where we're located out of, Oviedo, and I think all of us in the room, Zach, Sam, myself, we're all Florida boys. Zach, you weren't, or Sam, you weren't born in Florida,
but I've been here long enough that I'm used to our swampy, muggy weather, and anything colder than 60, I've got 2 layers on.
Correct, especially when the greenhouse tends to warm up like 10 degrees hotter. So if you think Florida's hot on like a summer day, when you look at like, the Weather Channel, and they're like, or sunny Orlando is 94, like guaranteed 105 in the greenhouse.
I was gonna say that's when you know it's bad, and that's when you know you've been in ag for a while. Is when you step out of the greenhouse into a June day in Florida. It's 98.
That
it's
anyone else
100%
would
humidity.
be complaining,
and you go, oh man, it's so nice out here. That's because it's 111 in the greenhouse.
Exactly.
With, like, all humidity. You're swimming in there.
Yeah, you don't even need a swimming pool at that point.
Exactly.
And at that point too, like fans are like, it's better. It's moving air, but
it's not nothing, but it's also not.
It's still 111.
Right.
So, but that being said, though, we're not there yet. We're still in winter,
thankfully.
But we do have some warmer weather coming up over the next couple of weeks, which Florida has been unusually cold this year.
I was gonna say this last week has been pretty cold.
Yeah, I mean, even all of December, I was looking back at some things. We have already burned the same amount of propane as we did the entirety of last winter at the time of this recording, which is, and we still have a few months to go.
Right.
As something more, I mean, thousands of gallons of propane.
Right. And
just
those
to
are
heat and grow plants.
temperature like kicked on. So it's just the fact that it's been so cold. They're just running.
Yeah, so usually we get, like a nice week of cold weather. Then you have a weekend where you can go to the beach, maybe 2 weekends where you're out doing stuff. Then it gets cold again. You're like, all right, I'll bring out the jackets again. But now it's just like, it's been cold nonstop, which I love.
Right.
But
Yeah,
it's like being from Florida, it's just hard to get used to. Just straight cold. Like
it's hard to plan for it. Like
yeah. And because we don't know how to plan for it, great segue too. We did release some new merch on the website. A couple for Every Plant Has a Story as well. There's an Every Plant Has a Story t-shirt now out, available in a lot more colors than we've released other t-shirts in the past, which was always something that customers asked about.
And Zach's sporting one of the Always Growing More hats that look amazing.
Yeah, that's a nice hat.
Yeah, I wear this like every day now.
Yeah, there's also, for those of you, and what I meant by we got ahead of ourselves, there's also Gabriella flip-flops out there.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we got the taste of like, you know, a high of 80 something, and we're like, yep, flip-flops.
Flip-flops it is.
Already ordered. Like we were, those have been like ready and on standby for a month now.
The whole office is going to be rocking them next week.
Exactly. But not the greenhouse. Got to stay safe. But that all being said, if you like flip-flops or like cold feet, you can go buy some flip-flops.
Exactly. If you're up north and you like to have cold toes, we got you as well.
Got you covered. And if you're someplace where it's really snowing, there is a beanie up there too now, which is one of those little things.
Yeah,
nice.
Exactly.
Again, these are things we don't think about as Florida people because the use of a beanie is pretty limited.
You've got 3 days in Florida calendar year that you can wear a beanie without having a sweaty head.
Yeah, exactly. Without it doing more damage than the help it's providing. Well, that all being said, guys, that's kind of some of the housekeeping stuff. We have a lot of stuff coming through the pipeline. I mean, so much that we could talk about, and a lot of it's not even super related to the podcast. Right. With that being said, I think that wraps up most of the housekeeping stuff. And obviously, like I said at the beginning, the mission of Every Plant Story podcast is to tell more plant stories, and I'm super excited about the guest we have coming up. So let's go ahead and get into that interview we were able to do today with Georgia. I think you guys will really enjoy, and we'll see you guys soon. All right, so we have our special guest, Georgia Wilson. Some of you guys may know her from Instagram at plants.n, the letter N, .things. She's a graphic designer, wonderful plant enthusiast, and a huge part of our plant community. Give it up for Georgia, guys. I mean, absolutely. Welcome. How are you?
Happy to be. I'm good. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's been a while since we last got to talk with you. For those who don't know, we released the kind of what we could best research as the origin or possible origin story to the Pink Princess. But that was all the way back in May. Obviously, 2020 was the year, Sam, that 2020 was.
Right.
What's been up in your world since then?
Oh, man, it's like you said, it's been a lot. But the big thing I've been working on is the print version of the guide that we worked on together, the history part of that.
Right. The digital download. I mean, I'm always pushing. If for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Georgia has made really the only Pink Princess care guide that's out there. And one of the things that I always love, and you've probably seen me write this in comments, even Sam, you probably seen me write this in the behind the scenes, is that a lot of what's in there is not only helpful for Pink Princess, obviously for what it was written on, but plenty of other variegated plants, have those same kind of characteristics, especially in the aroid. It's so exciting that you guys are working on it. From everything I've read, I mean, I've even seen people asking, when are you going to have the paper version? But that was a huge thing that you released. Congratulations. What has the feedback been on the digital copy, and how has that changed who you are in the plant community?
I honestly, the whole thing it's shaped my life. It's shaped the way I look at plants. I mean, I started a business because of this book. I sold so many copies. I'm like, well, I guess I need to start a business with this.
That's awesome.
Right. It's been hugely formative for me. It was just the plant that I love. I design books for a living, and that's also what I love. So it was kind of this excuse to go into the research aspect of things, looking into the why, not just I grow mine in bright light and it works. Well, why? And can I get information on that? And so it was an excuse to do that research and make some art and then make a cool book along the way. And turns out it's really helping people.
Yeah. So speaking of the book, I mean, that's a big question I see a lot. When can people, I mean, I'm already hyped. I mean, I'll pre-order copies for the whole team. I mean, I think it's great. The illustrations in it is great. I think what you have in what you created is something that's truly unique in that it has valuable information, but also is visually appealing, which I feel like is one of those for any topic though. I mean, Sam, it can be the same for like music gear or anything else. Like the tendency to either have like the most boring plain text like file that has the best explanation possible, but you can't make it through paragraph 2, or it's a picture book and nothing's explained and it's not really a resource guide. So like what you were able to put together is like the perfect blend of that of what you are, a graphic designer and a plant enthusiast, and you have some experience editing books specifically, right?
Yeah, I design books for a living. I work for an architecture firm, so we work on research. I do research for my day job too. Oh, you asked for a date. I actually have a date for the print guide.
Oh yes,
it's coming out. The launch pre-sale is launching on February 8th.
Awesome. February 8th.
February 8th is when the pre-sale will launch, and then I'll order the books and get them sent out to everybody.
Awesome. Well,
that's super exciting.
That's for sure. I will definitely be in line when that happens. You'll have to keep us posted. Obviously, you will on your Instagram.
Definitely.
That being said, where for those aren't familiar, your website, where are you going to be able to find that book when it does drop?
You'll be able to find the book definitely on my website on georgelorette.com, LAURETTE. But I believe it will also be on Amazon.
Wow.
Awesome.
So, very good.
That's really
like you
exciting.
said, starting a business.
Right.
I mean, it's not just, I think some people think I'm just taking the digital book and printing it out, but it's totally different. It's twice. I mean, it's better. I took everything I learned from making the digital guide and I got some questions from that, and it's twice as long. It's got way more information. You'll be able to request it from your library. It's got like an ISBN, so it's a book.
Yeah. I was going to say the same thing. It's a book.
That is awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That is amazing. So, I mean, obviously that is an accomplishment in and of itself, but it's been a while since May of 2020. What else has been new in your world?
Well, I'm growing some anthuriums from seed, which is cool.
All right.
Something I've always wanted to do. Yeah. We moved. More plants.
Yeah, I saw on Instagram a few days ago, you did update to the previous video we put out. You did get a higher, more height and a larger totem for your pink princess. It's quite tall now, because that was the thing we talked about afterwards, Sam. When we did the interview afterwards, she's like, I mean, yeah, I want to get it to, go to bloom and stuff, but like at this point it's already, is that why you moved? Hold on, I'm connecting the dots here. Is that
gotta get a room big enough?
Yeah, because the last time we talked, she was like, what do you do when you hit an 8-foot ceiling? Which is a legitimate question to people who live in normal size house. So you got a bigger house for the pink princess,
right?
No, I'm just planning to chop her in spring. She's reached the ceiling.
Okay. So she has officially reached full height.
Yeah.
It is always cool though to see whether customers or just other people in the plant community letting their plants, especially the plants that belong in the types of plants that prefer to climb, that prefer to go vertical. Most of those that do that also, as you see in that post you made, their leaves get much bigger as well. I mean, that's a characteristic of a lot of the aroids that do like to climb.
I get a lot of questions of why I don't cut it up, and that's my original plant, and I cut it I think about 6 months after I got it about 4 years ago, and those cuttings that I took from that original time are where all of my other princesses come from. That big one I haven't cut in 3.5 years, and my whole goal was to get the biggest possible plant that I could get inside. Because I mean, I'm in Washington D.C. in an apartment, so like I am limited.
Gotcha.
Don't have a greenhouse, so. But I'm super pleased with it. It's enormous. I don't know if I'm going to get a flower at this point, but it's okay.
All right. Well, I'm sure we will. The nice thing is you're starting to see, and you and I have talked privately some, and I do want to get your thoughts on just, you know, what are some of your favorite things you've seen in the plant community. But I think as as things like your book, as other resources begin, things like this podcast, the efforts we're doing with Brett to try to educate people more about plants. One of the coolest things I saw in 2020 was definitely the desire to learn more. Not for every single plant person, but there were a lot of people, in all different types of ways in your life. You had some extra time at home. You had to, had to find something to not only do, but
invest in.
Invest in, learn more, really get into it. And it's been, even if yours doesn't go to flower, it's cool, at least from my vantage point since the last time we talked, there are a lot more people who are aware of how the plant grows. And I'm sure we're going to be able to get you plenty of photos of all different types. And that's one of the weirder things about pink princesses. They don't necessarily have a super consistent bloom that has been observed, which was part of what you were trying to observe yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've actually, at this point, part of my initial desire to get the plant to bloom was that you can't really find many photos. Like when I was originally researching this book, I think I found two. Mm-hmm. Like I found one deep on Pinterest and I emailed the girl. And but at this point, I have a whole folder of different flowers that are different pink princess blooms, and they all look different because it depends on, if there's variegation in the stem. It could be all pink or it could be, a dark green. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is a fun, just little fun fact that they can be varying colors. But I hope that even if yours cannot make it to that height, that as the internet has more and more people, the call is out there now. If you're listening to the Every Plant Story podcast, you have a story to tell. Get in contact with plants.n.things on Instagram. Georgia would love to see your pink princess if it does bloom. But that all being said, I also wanted to just bring up something that I saw when I was showing the guys kind of doing some show prep for the podcast, and I showed them that not only the digital download and things, I wanted them to be familiar with that, but you have a variety of other designs and things on your website, and one I wanted to bring up specifically because I love it so much because it's such a simple message, but in my mind it really demonstrates the heart behind people who are growers because of being passionate about growing things. And that quote reads, propagate as much as possible and send it to as many people as possible. Now, that quote has a really awesome history. Do you care to share that?
Of course. It's actually one of my favorite designs. So the quote is by Dr. Croat, who is basically the Arrowwood botanist. If there's a person to know, it's him. He's literally the one writing the books, naming the plants, out in the jungle, finding them. Yeah,
he is the expert that's still living, and that's a sad reality. Is that a lot of the people who even in the 2000s or more recently have passed on, but Dr. Croat is one of those leading voices in especially the research side. But continue.
Yeah, he actually said that quote to in an interview for In Defense of Plants, and I saw it in some memes. I saw the interview, and I was like, it just strikes a chord. It says something to me, and so I did this design. I got really excited. I made the whole design, and then I did it. I'm like, wait a second, I have to ask him. Is this okay? Can I use this? It's his quote. I wrote out this whole email, and I'm like, thank you for all the work that you've done. I really admire you, and this is just incredible. Thank you. And is it okay if I put this design on a T-shirt? I'll send you a copy and send you some stickers. And if I need to pay you anything like a licensing fee, I totally will. And he just sent it off. All right, let's see what he says.
The nervous, just sitting there, should I have done it? Oh no, I shouldn't have done it. Oh my god,
refreshing your email over and over again.
But you refresh it constantly for the first 30 seconds, and then you go, what am I doing? I need to turn my computer completely off, and then you completely overreact. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Turn the phone off, not going to check it, and then you go to do something else. But the whole time you're watching Netflix, you're just but what about my email?
Yeah, I haven't checked it. But what happened? What did you hear?
That was me, and I basically heard back from him immediately. He was thrilled. He thought it was awesome. It was great design. He said, please, artists, don't make enough as it is. Don't send me any money.
That's awesome.
Send this out in the world.
That's great to hear.
That is amazing.
amazing. So of course he has a shirt and some stickers.
Okay. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. It's one of my favorite designs too. I grabbed a couple stickers of it a while back, and it's just, like I said, it encapsulates the passion behind what I think a lot of people who are not only from obviously a professional grower standpoint, like that is our goal, not only our business, but our mission is to grow and ship more plants. And, this is essentially that, but just stripped down to if you have a plant and it's legal to do so, propagate it and share it with others. Right. And if you're, even the ones that are protected plants and stuff, sharing and not making money off of it is not, not a violation of any type of patent or anything. Right. So,
or even just sharing information and just teaching people. And I mean, like you are with a book, I mean, something like that is just so awesome, where you're taking your passions and
definitely your
knowledge, and you can just kind of translate it to people that can't learn that type of stuff as easily, or just are not aware of it.
And sometimes the simple, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, and just to echo that point and to jump back to what a little bit about what you were saying with this quote, it kind of feels like it encapsulates like this growing spirit that at least I personally have seen, as you Shane, have kind of spearheaded this, at least at our business, this effort to educate and bring that service and that knowledge to the plant community. It's really cool to see, not only with your book, but with this sticker and this kind of passion,
the attitude, the passion, the overflow.
It's about sharing it with other people. It reminds me of the propagate goodness and grow a dam, like those things where there's this thirst for the knowledge, and the community wants to include more people and get it out there and make it accessible, like you're saying. And that's so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And I think that segues into one of the things I was most excited to ask you. And then I do have to ask you the two terrible, awful questions that we ask every podcast guest on the podcast. But before we get there, I mean, Sam kind of touched on it. I mean, we've seen a lot of, people growing in passions and things, and we've kind of expressed just then like what we've been like, what's brought us most joy in what we've seen in the plant community. Despite what 2020 was, we don't even need to go there. I think the fact that from what I saw, for the most part, like you said, with the propagate goodness, the plant community gets around needs that exist, and otherwise is a pretty focused community on the thing that ties us all together, which is plants. And that's been a really cool thing to see it go cross any type of line that you would draw in the sand. And the one story that, I loved the most, it was a email I got, long story short, basically from a customer saying that, there were conflict and stuff with my family all growing up. And, one of the things was I kind of moved further away from my grandma and, that kind of thing. But essentially, long story short, it was a very long email, but long story short, plants are the thing that they could get together and talk about. And it didn't have to be current events or other things. And they could stay focused on something they had in common and grow their,
bridge that gap.
And bridge the gap and grow that relationship and friendship. And I've personally, like, nothing makes me happier than seeing that. Not only from like I want humans to succeed and resolve conflict and be the best they can be, but also that plants was the mechanism to bring people together. All of that to say, though, Georgia, what are some of the favorite, or what is your favorite thing that you've seen, even with what 2020 was since the last time we spoke? What's made you joyful in the plant community?
Really the community of the plant community. I mean, I think that it's easy to get drawn into the drama and the negative side, but plants have such a power to connect people regardless of what your position on literally anything is. We can all get behind plants and the joy of plants and the joy of discovering and sharing. And I think it's been possibly the best thing about this year, like how many people got into plants and then how involved everybody has gotten.
Yeah. That wanting to dive deeper, that wanting to become, more and more passionate. That's awesome. Moving on to the two questions, we do want to respect your time. I know we're having to record this midweek and stuff, so we all have things that we have to do. But we couldn't let the podcast be released without asking the two questions, which honestly, I just picked these two questions a long time ago because of the questions that like inevitably got asked in every live string I ever did. Any Instagram Q&A, half of the questions are these two questions just repeated over and over and over again. But for some reason, the fascination is obviously a lot of the people who are celebrities isn't the right word, but figures in the plant community. There's a lot of just like assumptions that we know best how to take care of plants. We've never had a plant die in our care. We're professional growers. And I mean, Sam, you've been with me since we first took over the wholesale business. You were there with me day one. When we were
pulling ferns.
Yeah. When we were trying to figure out how a fax machine worked and why sometimes it would just spit out a piece of paper saying failed. It didn't really make a whole lot of sense. And to go from, but the perspective from, the general audience is we're professionals. We don't make mistakes. There's no that. And there's no plant we hate. It's just love. It's all good plants. There, it's just a happy making plant factory, and it goes on 24/7. That being said, the two questions, you can tackle them in whatever order you want. Least favorite plant at the moment. I understand things like that are subjective to time and that kind of thing. But and also most embarrassing plant story.
Oh man, those are hard.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about. See,
Sam, stumpers.
Yeah, this is what they're not. See, the whole beginning was going really well. The book. We got them really on the team. And then we just like, get them comfortable. All right, now let's hit the real facts.
Here are the tough questions.
Yeah.
Here I was expecting favorite plant, which is hard enough, but least favorite. Okay, so this might be a little controversial, and it would maybe be more framed as most overrated. But Spiritus Sancti, I think they're great. They're beautiful. But A, they're endangered in the wild. And B, Philodendron atabopoines is spectacular and has the same little lobes and is available.
Yeah. Now, for those of the audience and probably even Sam,
right over my head,
right over the head. Explain. Obviously, I know what you're talking about. One of the rarest plants, like in existence, or one of the most overhyped. If you think Pink Princess is hyped, you have not met this plant. You want to just give the quick summary of that, but I agree with you. I do think that there's a lot of emphasis put on popular or most sought after, and those don't always equate to the favorites. Even for the people who own them sometimes, that may not be the actual plant that brings you the most joy. But for those who don't know what Spiritus Sancti is, explain.
So in very condensed terms, basically it's a really long leafed plant that grows in, I believe, Brazil in like one spot. And it's basically been destroyed everywhere else. So it's nigh impossible to find. They go for tens of thousands of dollars, and they're known for just their unusual looking high lobed leaves, really long, skinny. Yeah,
I'm bringing, see the photo that I brought up on the computer, Sam. Also kind of looks like an Anthurium pendulifolium. Obviously it's a philodendron, but you're right. There are a lot of other plants with long leaves. And part of what's made this particularly difficult, and she's right when she says thousands of dollars for a single plant. But these, I don't own one, so I can't speak from like experience, but four leaves a year, probably something like, I mean, they're ridiculously slow.
It's in perfect condition. Yeah,
it's ridiculously slow. So there's like not even a viable pathway to, propagate and share with others, as the sticker would say. Like that mechanism doesn't exist. And that's some rare plants, not all, but there are other plants that, whether they're endangered or not, the main reason we don't have more of them is because they don't cooperate. And they just...
It's really hard to grow.
Because
it's just time. You just got to wait on them.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're waiting, months for a leaf...
to spit out one leaf.
Imagine the rooting time on that.
Exactly.
I mean, but okay, I'll accept that as least favorite plant. I think that's fair enough. Most embarrassing plant story, though.
So I am a huge proponent of telling the embarrassing plant stories. So I have more than enough of those. But the most embarrassing one, I think my Somatophyllum bipennifolium, bipentacidum. I'm blubbering that one, but you know what I mean. The big giant one. I grew it. It was one of my original plants. one of my original arrowwoods, actually, 3 or 4 years ago. And I grew it to this massive monster that was like 6 feet across, one leaf over here and one leaf over here. And it became a problem in my very small apartment in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, 6 foot by 6 foot looks great in a greenhouse,
right.
or, you know, in a
outside
really,
or something,
or, you know, what you
porch.
imagine on like Good Home, like, you know, any
right.
of the like house shows on like HGTV or something where like the ceiling's forever tall. Hey, you could fit your pink princess totem in there too. Continue. Sorry.
So it was wonderful and I loved it. My fiance was not a huge fan of walking through the leaves to get to the door. So we compromised and got it on a shelf up high, which was nice initially because it was out of the way, but I didn't quite think about how it wasn't getting enough light. It was drier, less air, and basically the poor thing just got so neglected that it more or less died.
Rest in peace.
R.I.P. Pour one out.
Yeah, pour one out for that one. You know, why, when did this happen?
You know, it's a long process. You know, it takes a while for a big plant like that to slowly just not be happy. It was a long, maybe over the last year or so, it just kind of declined.
Wow, man, I didn't mean to ask the follow-up question to further embarrass you. No, but like we were saying, and I'm
salt in that wound.
Exactly.
I'll cut that part out because no, I won't. But that is a little mean. I'm sorry, Georgia. No, but I think you're right at the start though that like none of us should be embarrassed to tell those stories.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's been plenty of times that out of sight, out of mind in a giant greenhouse where we've left a bunch of stuff at the back of a bench and come back 3 weeks later and go, oh, none of this got watered. Like, how did I miss that? Like, my bad, 30 plants.
Yeah, it's never fun, but what you learn something from it though.
Right.
And I think that's what people should be taking away from any type of embarrassing story is that there is the lesson to be learned and you become a better grower through it for sure.
Oh yeah. That's the flip the bench when you're taking ferns off and then you load them all back up and you flip it the other way because you're not paying attention.
Yep, done that too.
Been there.
Pretty much any mistake that you can make in a greenhouse.
Right.
I'm sure
we've been there.
Yeah, professional mistake makers. So trust us that you have nothing to be embarrassed about. But I do think it's a good lesson to the plant community in that each embarrassing story, each failure, whatever, I'm putting air quotes up, but any of those words that you would use, I think the better word is lesson.
Right.
And
a learning moment. It's like every time something goes wrong, like there's something to learn from it.
For sure.
Just don't put your plants up high where you don't think about them.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, before we go, I just wanted to ask one more follow-up because it was something that you mentioned to me the other day, and I know we didn't have a chance to squeeze in that portion of the interview. But when the book released February 8th, that same person who provided that quote in your sticker, tell us how Dr. Croat was involved in the book, which I mean is huge news. I mean, like, I can't even put into perspective how awesome that is for you, how proud I was when I heard about this. But yeah, tell me that.
So basically, I was wrapping up the book, doing all the last final details, and I was looking at other books to see, you know, was I missing anything to make it a book? And they all had a foreword that, you know, set it up, and it was written by somebody that didn't write the book that kind of introduced it. I'm like, so I need a forward. Like, who would be the best? Dr. Croat, the best person. I mean, you know, pie in the sky. There's no way this guy would write.
Yeah, I mean, who else could you get?
Right. Best of the best.
But I mean, like, there's no way he has time for me. You know, he's off writing research papers and stuff. But it, you know, doesn't hurt to ask. So I sent him a little copy of the guide. I wrote out a letter and said, you know, if you have time, it would be really great if you could do this. And he replied to me on Thanksgiving, actually, and sent me the forward right then. Like, yeah, this is awesome. This is beautiful work. Well done. It's just, it's amazing.
That is awesome.
There's a forward by Dr. Croat in the Pink Princess Guide.
Awesome. Well, I haven't been able to read that forward yet, but I will once I get my hands on this physical book. For those of you who are listening that want to go check out Georgia's stuff, you can find her on Instagram at at plants.n.things. If you search YouTube for Gabriella Plants, you'll find our channel where some of those other videos we talked about that we released earlier in 2020 are as well. And you want to give them your website one more time too, if they want to go grab that digital download or the sticker or any of the other stuff that you have there. Because I mean, every design, we only had time to touch on a few, but I mean, even we even purchased your pink princess lapel pins, which I think are currently sold out, but we distributed those to every team member last year.
Yeah, those were awesome, by the way.
Yeah, very cool. But where can they find all that stuff?
My website is Georgia, Georgia, Laurette, LAURETTE.com. You can do /shop or just go to the shop and everything's there.
Awesome. Well, Georgia, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Every Plant Story podcast. We hope to catch up with you soon, and we'll be sure to put those links and things in the show notes. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks you. For having me. See you.
So Sam, that was a really fantastic interview. Yeah. Again, thanks so much to Georgia for doing that interview with us. It's been a while since I got to actually talk with her on the phone, so that was a lot of fun. Zach, what else is new coming up in the media world now that you're doing what you're doing for Gabriella?
Yeah, I've been slowly kind of falling in the rhythm. We've been working on some cool stuff. One of them being, which I know you posted a little teaser in the behind the scenes group, but
yeah, our Facebook behind the scenes group.
Yeah, working on a 360 photo system so we can kind of go through and update all of the photos on the website so that people can just go on and be able to scroll left and right and kind of just see that full 360 view of whatever plant they're looking at. Yeah, so it just gives you a way more just accurate look.
Right. And, talk about making the customer experience better, which is, I mean, what we at Gabriella Plants are always trying to do, Sam. I mean, that has been a project that you and I have talked about.
I was going to say, I was taking a lot of the photos before Zach came on board, and that was always one of the struggles as I was taking them, is like, all right, I got to find the right angle.
Yeah, how much do you rotate it?
Right, what's the best angle?
What's your good side? Is it this side?
Exactly,
Is it this
and then
side?
it's also like, well, okay, I want to make sure that you can, because there's, it's a 360 thing, it's a circle, there's all these sides, so you're like, well, I want to show them the most plant I can, but also then sometimes you're like too far away, so I was seeing a little bit of that teaser, and I was like, oh, this is next level.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I feel like that's going to be really just something that kind of stands out too, where people can go on. And I mean, it's any like those, I mean, you go on Amazon and most products nowadays, you can see the whole view and you're already more comfortable just buying something, be able to see the entire product. And
I think it's also something that you don't see a whole lot in plants specifically, which is something we're always trying to do is find new ways of telling every plant story.
Right.
I mean, just like we do on the podcast. And obviously the podcast is meant to share the stories, both the embarrassing plant stories, the fails, but also just the stories of so many growers, so many pieces of the plant community that it takes to even have the ability to go to your local plant shop and pick up a plant this weekend. All that takes so much effort. And I think that it's a unique perspective for us, given who we are and what we are, to be able to help further educate customers and provide new ways of them better understanding the plants that they're purchasing, better seeing better photos, anything we can do to keep growing those passions in people. Zach,
and on that note, I think we're going to be hopefully starting a live.
Yes, that is
a
also
live little thingy once a month.
We're going to be using
in the works.
So right now we're recording in Studio A, which is at Aloma, in technically my office. But one of the things we want to do, obviously the Every Plant Story podcast is audio format like this. But one of the other things we do want to do, and Zach and I are working on it, is to be able to do a monthly live Q&A and more of a show, because there are elements of stories of plants and things that, even in the spirit of sanctity in the interview we did, being able to show some of those pictures or, do a more
be able to have that live feedback and be able to have just more of a real conversation with multiple people.
Right.
Yeah, they serve different purposes, but I think they'll both be really cool ways for us to connect with not only the listeners of the show, but also connecting various listeners with each other and guests with other listeners and things like that. So that is on the horizon too, Zach. Bravo for everything you're accomplishing this week. The entire team is functioning well. And with that, guys, thanks so much for listening. Thanks, Sam and Zach, for being here on the podcast. Thanks for listening, guys. If you want more information about our guests or anything else we talked about, you can find that in the show notes below. And otherwise, we will see you next week.
See ya.